Present.
Eric Kranzis is excused. Heath Curtis, Board of Forestry.
Here.
Great. As it is blatantly obvious, this is a hybrid meeting. And so take a moment to confirm that any phone numbers or names that are attending virtually, is there anybody that we need to confirm or reach out to?
All accounted for.
Okay, excellent. Ask that everybody mute their mics so that we don't pick up any side conversations or inadvertent phone calls. And finally, for the public that has joined and is with us online or in the room, if you wish to make a comment during agenda item number 12, I will give a fair warning for agenda item 11 to raise your hand or place the comment in the meeting chat. For those in the room, we will take agenda item number 12 as a public comment before we close the meeting. Meeting materials were available to committee members prior to the meeting, and all meeting materials for this meeting will be on the Board of Forestry website under committees, EFCC, and they'll be updated as soon as possible after the meeting with any additional information that is presented during the meeting appended to the meeting minutes and the meeting materials. With that, we'll get started here. Now that we're done with the logistics, I want to welcome ODF staff and committee members here and look forward to a productive meeting of our quarterly meeting. With that, let's move to agenda item number 2, approval of the minutes for March 3rd, 2026. Can we entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented via email to the committee members?
I'll move to approve the March 3rd, 2026 meeting minutes.
Okay. We have a second?
Second.
Catherine, thank you, Bobby. Excellent. We'll close agenda item 2, move to agenda item 3, the financial status of the Oregon. Oh, my bad. Thank you. I am raring to go. Yes, we do need to vote. All those in favor, please respond with aye.
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 Aye. Okay. John, you're on mute. Any opposed? Approve the minutes. Excellent. No one opposed. Motion carries. Now we'll move to agenda item number 3 and close the meeting minutes vote. A financial status of the Oregon Forest Land Protection Fund. Orna.
Good morning. I'm Lorna Hobbs, the EFCC Finance Coordinator. My report today covers the Oregon Forest Land Protection Fund's actual revenues and expenditures through April 30th, 2026, and projected revenues and expenditures through the end of the fiscal year. The beginning balance on July 1, 2025 was $9,749,577. Under revenues, item number 1, estimated assessment revenue for fiscal year 26 is $13,632,512, and actual revenue received as of April 30th is $13,160,604. And this is 96% of the estimated amount at the 97% collection rate. Item number 2, total harvest tax revenue for FY26 is estimated at $2,328,079, with $1,316,204 received as of April 30th. This includes 3 of the 4 quarterly payments for the fiscal year. The 4th payment of the year was received in May, but is not accounted for in this report that only goes through April 30th. And it is over $800,000 for that 4th payment under the new rate. Item number 3, for interest, the first column shows $36,737 in interest for fiscal year 25, which was received after July 1, 2025. Total revenue from interest on the account for FY 26 is estimated at $735,958, with $536,536 received as of April 30th. The interest rate has remained at 4.0% since my last report. Total estimated revenues for fiscal year 26 are $16,696,549, with $15,013,344 received as of April 30th. Total actual revenues received, including the interest from fiscal year 25, equals $15,050,081. Moving on to expenditures and transfers out of the fund. Item number 1 reflects the transfer of $165,000 for fiscal year 25 payroll and operating expenses that were moved after the start of the fiscal year. And as I stated previously, there's still an additional $2,000 or so to move for FY25. Item number 2, we adjusted the estimated payroll and operating costs from $185,000 from the last report down to $175,000, just to reflect a more accurate number as we're tracking closer to that. Item number 3 is the total of minimum and improved lot assessment revenue. $13,632,512 available for transfer for fiscal year 2027 district budgets that the committee approved at its January 6th meeting. And item number 4 is harvest tax revenue in the amount of $1,164,015 available for transfer for fiscal year 27 district budgets. And this number is the $332,968 remaining from the $13.5 million cap from fiscal year 25, plus $831,047 in revenue for quarters 3 and 4 of calendar year 2025. So adding the assessment revenue and harvest tax revenue brings the amount for transfer for fiscal year 2027 district budgets to $14,796,527. Total expenditures for fiscal year 26 are estimated at $14,971,527. Actual expenditures as of April 30th, including the transfer for fiscal year 25 operating expenses, total $165,000. The current fund balance as of April 30th, 2026 was $24,634,657 with an estimated ending balance of $11,309,598. And that is the end of my report, unless there are any questions.
Thank you, Lorna. Any questions from committee members?
I just had a quick one. Heath Curtis, who pays you the 4% on the interest income?
We received that from the Treasury.
And is that the same rate applied across all cash held by agencies?
Yeah, that's their rate. Yep. Any Treasury accounts would have the same rate.
Actually, James Short, Chief Financial Officer for Department of Forestry. The only treasury account that the agency has that does not receive interest is the main treasury account for our main operating expenditures. That is not an interest-bearing account for the agency. Just wanted to make sure we had a clarification on that. But all the other ones are set up that way.
Thank you.
Catherine here. How many staff now pull salary from this fund in this new world?
As Nancy Hirsch, the Emergency Fire Cost Committee Administrator. So the Emergency Fire Cost Committee has two positions in the biennial budget. One is the administrator position that I hold, and then Lorna Hobbs is in the finance coordinator position. So just those two are the only funded positions.
That's what I suspected, but I wanted to make that clear.
Well, Lorna, I appreciate this. This is the first partial year under House Bill 3940 with funding. And so it's nice to see the budget starting to get built right for us and the committee to be able to look at this and start to think towards the future. Because you can do a lot of projections, you can do a lot of estimating of how things are going to work, how they'll look. It's helpful, your budget and actuals, what you've presented here today, so that we can see that, start to think about the future and how we can be impactful in our partnership with ODF for this. So any other questions or comments from committee members? All right. Move on from agenda item number 3 and take up agenda item number 4, which is well, maybe this year it's not my favorite, but typically the June weather update is the one that I look forward to the most. But Ms. Alcock, you have the floor. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. For the record, my name is Teresa Alcock. I'm the fire planner analyst working for the division of ODF here, the Fire Protection Division. And as usual, I've got quite a few graphics to show through this fire season outlook today. So we're going to set the stage. We're going to take a look at the temperature and precipitation anomalies, or how different they were from average conditions over last winter and spring. We'll take a look at the snowpack and the snow water equivalent, and take a look at the drought and the forecasted drought outlook. And then I wanted to always include some of the larger influences on our weather, which is the El Nino Southern Oscillation influence. There's been a lot of information about that swirling around about a potential strong El Nino that normally affects us in the wintertime, in the fall and the winter, but there's some indication for some impacts starting already in the summer. And then I wanted to give a special thanks to Pete Parsons and John Bonk. These are our kind of lead meteorologists in Oregon for sure, and in the region. And I heavily lean on their forecasts. Obviously, they're the meteorologists, and try to translate some of how their outcomes into something that we can use. And then one of the things that they do is look back in time and find years that are similar to this year in terms of the El Nino influence, some other larger oceanic and atmospheric connection influences. And they look at the snowpack, and John Bonk has been looking at the lightning over the past few years, and they found some similar years that we can at least gauge, what those years looked like compared to this year. And so we'll take a look at the acres burned on that as well. And then I'm just going to do a quick check for those of you in this group that track the NFDRS indices, or the National Fire Danger Rating System indices. We're looking at the ERC and the 1,000-hour fuel moistures. And then we'll round out with the National Significant Wildland Fire Potential Outlook. And I have a special U.S. Wildland Fire Service Special Fire Environment Statement, just to alert some of us that are active fire managers out there. And then we'll take a look at the NOAA Climate Prediction Center's forecasts all the way out through the season. But, those are fantasy forecasts, and they will change as we go. And then we'll round it out with a summary. So just really quickly, you guys have probably already heard about this. We had these elevated temperatures over winter, really the warmest temperatures on record for Oregon from November through April. I did this several times already so far and looked at it from the start of the water year on October 1st through February and March and April. And yeah, it still confirms that we've ranked 131 out of 131 years of tracking temperatures. And so it was a very warm winter. And then just looking at the last couple of months to see if we've recovered anything over the spring, and we're still elevated 3 to 7 degrees above normal temperatures since the beginning of April, and most areas were below 50% in precipitation. We did have some thunder showers come through the state over the last week or so, and it helped out a little bit, but we're still in deficit. Snow depth, you've heard about this. We've had a snow drought over winter. They're about 14% of normal. You can see on the picture on the right, just pretty bleak. The peak of snow happens usually around April 1st, and we'll take a look at the next slide for details on that. But just wanted to mention that as I was talking with John Bonk, our meteorologist at the Northwest Interagency Coordination Center, that he tries to clarify that the snowpack conditions, we're all worried about fire season conditions, but during the season, it doesn't really affect the season except for the snow melt and water availability in our reservoirs and so forth. But really what it does is indicates an earlier start to fire season and potentially a little bit of a longer season. And so we've already witnessed that. Central Oregon went into one of its earliest fire season start dates in May. And a lot of our other districts have been coming on board through the end of May. So the snowpack may affect our start date of fire season, but it doesn't necessarily indicate that we're going to have an intense or a very severe fire season. Those depend on more to the point weather forecasts and winds and things like that we experience daily. So the shock value here for our snow water equivalent, just looking at the basins, we're expected to see the basins reduce in that snow water equivalent over May and going into June, and here we are going into summer. So we've had the lowest snow water equivalent along with an early snow melt, because remember, I don't know if you remember, but during March we had a little bit of a heat wave centered on southwestern United States, and we had some of that residual effects coming up north. And we were really hoping for some recovery in the snow, but we never really got it. So the chart on the bottom shows the kind of the overall snow water values in the state of Oregon, all stations combined for SNOTEL stations. And you can see the peak in the green dot in the middle of this kind of graph. And we're the black line at the very bottom. So we're at the very lowest, and no recovery through spring. Sometimes we do have that recovery. And then what I wanted to point out was 2015 and 2018. And those are the years that John Bonk has used as similar to this year in terms of the snowpack and other variables. And so as we go through the next few slides, we'll see those comparisons come up. And so on 2015 and 2018, you can see our basins were in similar, very low level conditions. Do a drought check, just been quickly forming over the spring. Last year, we take a look at last year, we were in much better shape, but it was still expanding, but we had a real good recovery from drought. In April of last year, we were in good shape. But now we've entered into some extreme drought pockets in the central part of the state. And 12 counties have already declared in drought, governor authorized in drought, and then 5 new have been requested, and Malheur County was requesting it on May 27th. So just keep tracking the potential for the use of water resources in these areas there. It's going to be a little bit tight for them. Again, 2015 and 2018, we're taking a look at the similar conditions. So 2015 in this case, pretty similar. The drought's expected to persist throughout most of the state and develop even into the northwest corner of the state here. So this influence of the El Nino. So El Nino, when we have El Nino conditions, which is a higher temperatures of ocean water off the west coast of South America and into the eastern Pacific Ocean down south, what El Nino does is it influences our subtropical jet stream and other big global atmospheric conditions. And this jet stream tends to move further south. The subtropical Pacific jet stream. And it brings extended wetter conditions through the southern part of the United States normally. And it's usually warmer in the northern and the northwest part of the state. And so in the fall and the winter, we see a little bit warmer and drier conditions, and we have more rain than snow. And last year we had more rain than snow, and we were in La Nina conditions, but it was a pretty weak La Nina. And so, this is just the general understanding of how this massive global ocean temperature affects the systems around the world, and it varies. But I did find on NOAA's physical sciences lab, they have some tools there where you can take a look at a comparison of historical averages, and you can find correlations with temperatures and precipitation. And I took a look at just June through September. It's kind of a wide swath. Sometimes it's better to go through July, August, and September. But you can see that there's a correlation with the warmer temperatures, even through our summer months. And there's a variable precipitation signature coming out of that physical sciences lab forecast there. And so we are expected to see a fairly strong El Nino. There's an 82% chance of it developing already. And it's going to persist through the end of 2026 and possibly beyond. So those are the forecasts for El Nino. And so just wanted to draw your attention to that. And Pete Parsons uses this as a foundation of looking at the next few months with his seasonal climate forecasts. And I always consult his climate forecast first. He takes a look at the temperature, precip, snowpack, all of those, in addition to the El Nino conditions and the Pacific decadal oscillation, some other larger oceanic influences. And this is quite a bit different. His May forecast is quite a bit different than April's. So we already have experienced a little bit cooler temperatures and some variable precip with the thunderstorms that came through last week, lots of lightning strikes. So June, July, and August are on here. Those are his 3 months. And it looks like it kind of averages out pretty much for June and July. And then definitely a signature for warmer temperatures, especially on the west side, and drier conditions when we hit August. So kind of over average, and then some troughing over Oregon, hotter weather chances in August. And John Bonk's outlook out of the Northwest Interagency Coordination Center, he compared 2015 and 2018. And for both analog years, fire starts peaked in July and large fire growth continued in August. 2015 was the most severe. You saw in the drought map too. There were more frequent thunderstorms in 2015, and it was our hottest summer on record. And then 2018 was a little bit less severe with a little bit less lightning. And so I wanted to show you his, this is from June 1st. The Northwest Interagency Coordination Center produces the National Significant Wildland Fire Potential Outlook for the Pacific Northwest for our geographic area. And so this is straight out of the horse's mouth here. And so we are looking at Eastern Oregon coming into above normal potential for significant fire on the east side, and of course up into Washington as well. And then as we progress through July, Southwest Oregon comes in, and then we're into it for August. And actually September is going to be the same there too. So they're forecasting above normal fire potential going through September. Got a typo there. So these are the comparison years. It just gives you a snapshot really quickly to show you some of the larger fires that occurred. 2015 and 2018 are the strongest correlation years, analog years. And you may remember the Canyon Creek Complex in Central Oregon, the Cornet Windy Ridge over on Eastern Oregon, and the Boxcar and the Klondike was down southwest in the Klamath Forest going toward California. So 2015 and 2018 acreages above average, but not our worst years. But just to give you that kind of glimpse into, comparing some of these fire years in terms of acres burned. And I wanted to give some of our fire folks out here a glimpse at the fire danger rating, and we're looking at the energy release component. So potentially, how intense fire might burn. It tracks heavy fuels, the fuel moistures, and that influence of drought over the season. And the only thing I really wanted to point out was these charts was the red line. That's the start of May 1st when we start tracking all these, and elevated ERCs all the way through May, even up to maximum levels. And then you can see the influence of the cooler temperatures and thunderstorm activity as that red line drops down as we headed toward the end of May, but just elevated all the way through for some of our key districts. And then 1,000-hour fuel moistures, the large fuel moistures, also a good indicator of tracking that drought. Minimum fuel moistures throughout May too. So definitely tracking it, and we'll have to track these daily. So looking at June, above normal temperature outlook and below normal precipitation. One of the influences that sometimes we just keep our eyes on is the Southwest American monsoon. And hopefully they'll have a little bit better monsoon. They need the moisture down there. But sometimes we get some residual moisture coming up into the Great Basin and into the southeast of Oregon. And but that's with potential thunderstorm activity as well. But on dry fuels, we worry about that. So just again, a glimpse at the National Wildland Fire Potential Outlook. We've already been through that, going out through September. And we had a fire environment statement issued on May 15th. There's a early onset of elevated fire potential in the west, and they focused on Department of Interior lands, but we're next door neighbors here. We're looking at the snow drought and all of these dry atmosphere, erratic temperatures, and so enough to warrant a fire environment statement. And they've already seen increased fire sizes and intensities in some of the Great Basin area, and as the fire season moves west, so to speak, and critical thresholds for dangerous fire behavior differ from normal. So they're seeing more intense fire behavior at lower wind speeds and at higher humidities, and they're seeing longer burn periods. And so just something for us to keep our eyes on as well. And these are all going to change, but as usual, it's summer. It's coming on to summer here. We've got above normal temperatures and below normal precipitation, but you can see that influence of the Southwest American monsoon. We've got that above normal precipitation. Maybe we'll get a finger of that precipitation coming up, at least into Southeast Oregon. So we've seen the record high temperatures, the record low snowpack. Drought conditions are forecasted to worsen. The El Niños coming on our heels, potentially strong. Correlated with a little bit warmer conditions in the Pacific Northwest. Not the strongest signature for our summer, but there's potential for other influences to come into play. That monsoonal, we'll keep our eyes open for that. Pete Parsons is forecasting mostly average conditions, some precipitation too in June and July. We'll see how that goes out, warmer and drier in August. And then the National Significant Fire Outlook from John Bonk. Large fire growth continued into August in 2015, 2018. So good reminders. So all long range forecasts are going to change. So with that, I appreciate your time and thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Alcock. Any comments or questions from committee members? I'll no doubt it's going to be a long season. And with that, this committee, as we think about that, it's a large toll on staff. So keep your people healthy, both mentally and physically. Okay. I appreciate that update and the thoroughness as we look around the corner to fire season, which has frankly already started. And as I noted, it's going to be a long one. Let's move to Yes, agenda item number 5, the executive. I'd like to welcome for the first time Miss Casey, the new state forester. Thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having, oh, these are loud. I need to back up. Move this away.
Some of those are finicky. There you go. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you in the future, and I'm told you've had a good update and history on the partnership and the interaction amongst the landowners, which this committee represents, and the ODF, which is over 100 years in this state where it's really been landowner driven. And then ODF helping to support that. And then now we have the landowners helping to support ODF as we continue to look into the future. And I view this committee and its history as a partnership, and a partnership comes with it's an overused word today in many cases, but I truly believe that this committee is an excellent representation of what it means to be a partnership, right? And that is in working together and supporting each other and holding each other accountable. And so I look forward to this committee's relationship with you and your tenure leading ODF and where we can go from here, especially coming in new, right as this committee makes a historic change from focusing on funding large fire in this state to now funding and supporting the preparedness, which to put a little bit on it, it's going to be a difficult fire weather year, but if we can stop all the fires from getting over 10 acres and hit that KPI, it'll be a big nothing burger for the year. So I say that in jest because in reality, I think it's going to be a challenging year. And what a year to join. So with that, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And thank you for having me here today. Yeah, there's no good year to join. I don't think anymore in fire season wise, it's either too much or too little. And either one has its challenges, but I really do look forward to this partnership. I've looked a lot into Oregon's rules and regulations and how you operate even from afar when I was in Nevada, and we've mimicked many of these items that you guys have long standing in Oregon, in Nevada. That is where I came from. I was a long tenured employee of the Division of Forestry, happily about to retire in Nevada, 6 years. I was away from a 30-year retirement, and then I got a call and it sounded like a good idea, and we'll see if it was. But I really do look forward to the partnership. I wanted to give a little bit of an update of what we're doing and where we're going as an agency. I am today finishing my 3rd month. So it feels like I've been here 1 week and 5 years all at the same time. 3rd month on the job, but 8 years as state forester in Nevada. Previous to that, 24 years in NDF, starting as a seasonal at the ground level, planting plants in our nursery, which was the best job I ever had, all the way up to state forestership. So lots of experience at the national level. Coming into this agency, ODF does a lot of great work in conjunction with partnerships, landowners, forest protection associations, rangelands, everyone, federal partners, state partners. We would like to expand on that and make sure that all of our plans, so we're working on an agency strategic plan. We have one in place, but we need to make that down into actions on the ground. And update that, which is actually necessary for our budget prep as we go into a long session. We just came out of a short session. This will be new for me. We were biennial budgets in Nevada, so having a budget session every year is going to be new and challenging and maybe easier. I don't know. But going into budget prep in a year where, like fire season, also going to be a little challenging, not, flat budgets, at least the economic outcomes are looking a little better than earlier predicted, and maybe we're not going down, but we can stay flat. So prepping a budget for how we stay flat and continue to do the work that's necessary to do both in preparation for fire season and during fire season. We are meeting today actually on at the leadership group level on shared stewardship, the 2.0 agreement. Where are we going with our partners as we move into implementation? We've done a lot of great work under the first shared stewardship agreement and the 20-year resiliency landscape resiliency strategy and implementing that. But how do we do that more strategically, and where are we going in the next 5 years? That's what we'll be talking about today. Maybe he's cleaning up what got blown all over out there. We are working very closely with our federal partners at the national level, engaging in their transition. Obviously, the wildland, I can't say it right, the Office of Wildland Fire Service, I think, is the interior side transition. And, from my perspective, that will make our lives a little easier on the firefighting front with the consolidation of interior agencies. We don't have to have 4 agreements. We only have to have 1 agreement. All of those agencies from a firefighting perspective are following one direction and hopefully moving in the same direction, which does make it simpler for us from a state agency perspective. We continue to watch the potential consolidation of agriculture as it may come in, and where the big thing for us is, knowing I've talked both to Chief Schultz on the agriculture side and Chief Fennessy on the Wildland Fire Service side. Very confident in the staffing levels of firefighting this year. They got both secretaries sent out directives of early aggressive initial attack, which is new this year and aligns with ODF's policies and strategies. So I think that will be really, really good. Where we continue to watch is as this consolidation occurs, how does the mitigation still occur when you kind of decouple wildland firefighters from natural resource management, as those two things, as everyone knows, go hand in hand. The people who fight fire are also the ones fighting fire in the spring season, mitigating, and in the fall season, burning piles. And so as you start to decouple these things, how do these natural resource projects at the federal level still continue to happen at the scale that's necessary to change how fire moves through and within these ecosystems? So very confident on our firefighting assets this year on the federal side, not super confident on the implementation side as they move through, but very much engaged in their reorganization process. You might have read that they're coming on the 17th. Interior or agriculture will be out here looking at space in this building for their state director and whoever is then staffed at the state office. So trying to further that partnership by co-locating, which I think will be a good idea as they're in such flux. Maybe more close coordination will be better as we move into that. So those are just a couple of things. There's probably 900 million other things that I'm working on, and my brain is a little scattered as I've got a high school graduate next week, so I'll be flying home for my last time, but we are shifted here. I have a house, my animals are here, just my family's not here. So hoping after that transition, it gets a little easier, but then we'll be in the throes of fire season. Nobody likes to come in a big one. I always hate to hear the words, it's not the worst year, but it's not going to be the best year. So one thing I always say, though, is that we are prepared and planned and ready. Our staff are trained. We're in the process of getting all the contractors are on board. Everybody's ready. Working with our federal partners, like I said, our other partners, we are as ready as we can be for what's about to come.
Well, thank you. Wish you the best in your personal transition and as you stepping into a role as complex right at a transition time in terms of entering fire season and all that brings to the agency. We wish you the best, truthfully. And with that, the floor remains yours for the executive branch for some updates. Anything else, or do we want to transition to the administrative branch report? Okay, well, we'll close that. Move to the administrative branch report. Thank you very much.
All right, good morning again. James Short, Chief Financial Officer. Just wanted to make sure we were following the agenda item numbers correctly here, Brett. So appreciate that, but here to provide the financial update for the agency as of June 2nd today. As we moving into fire season, the agency in our main cash count is roughly $45.2 million in cash. The Oregon Forest Land Protection Fund has a $25.6 million balance as of June 2nd today. And then on the general fund side, the fire protection program is sitting at a $46.7 million of general fund, and forest resources is roughly $36.4 million. One item to note is on the end of June, I believe it's the last complete week of June, the Oregon Forest Land Protection Fund will do their $14 million transfer to the ODF for the rate reduction process in the fiscal budgeting and readiness budget. So that will increase our available cash for fire season payments and billing up to another $14 million. So the agency going into this fire season and being the second year of a biennium, which is normally historically in the last couple of bienniums has been less money available, but the agency is sitting at $90 million of available cash and general fund resources that we can draw on to continue the payments to our vendors. And as we prepare going through fire season before the September emergency board or the December emergency board, when we ask for our net fire costs on that. Couple positive notes that the Forest, we received a nice reimbursement from the Forest Service of $8.2 million for the the elk fire out of Klamath Lake. They paid that within 5 business days of submission, which was a pretty quick turnaround from the Forest Service. Yeah,
Did you say 5?
that's what I said. Yeah, so they are some offices are paying, Albuquerque is paying a quick on the grant reimbursement on the federal funds for our grants. Our average has been under 30 days reimbursements for just our normal forestry grant work that we do from the Forest Service. So we've been continuing to see cash moving in pretty much on a new norm from the Forest Service for the last 6 months. They've been doing a great job of reimbursing the agency for their grant work and the BLM too. So it's been a positive note there. Moving on to currently we have about $337,000 of payables that we have to bill out or pay to our vendors right now, which an average days of 14 days turnaround on payments to vendors right now. So we're fully, the business services division in our financial services side is fully staffed right now. To our payables, to revenue, to our general ledger accountants. So we're ready for fire season, and majority of those staffers are on incident management teams too. So we do 2/3 of the disbursement staff are on a roster team, and so is the members in the general ledger unit and procurement too. So the business services division provides good support for rostered staff on IMTs also. Moving forward to any questions on the financial update? Catherine, yes.
Catherine here. James, so you said that all in all, going into the second year in the biennium, because of the change in the law, we have greater cash reserves right now in order to go into fire, and the feds are turning around their payments to us quicker. And so this looks like it's a new situation for you. You look quite happy. The people on the phone really can't, on the TV really can't see that. So I just want to confirm that this is a different financial position for this agency compared to the last, let's just say 2 to 3 years.
With the financial side of the agency right now, with the amount of money that we have moving into fire season, we've also have 3940 House Bill 3940 this past session engaged in conversations with the Treasury too, to ready for any backstop that we may need for resources also from the law in 3940. So we've started those conversations too, and it's been a positive work with between DAS, LFO, and the Treasury on that too. So
I would just like to say that I'm happy to hear that, that is a good metric point, a good key performance indicator that the legislation is working, that the department feels that it's in a more stable position, and that they've got 14-day turnaround on invoices right now going out, leading in, and the feds are paying in a record amount of time. Yay, feds. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I think maybe too, I'd add just some expectation setting kind of going into the summer with the outlook you guys saw. James is right. We are sitting in a good spot from a cash flow standpoint going into the summer. A lot of good work has gone on with trying to work through the legislation passed through House Bill 3940, whether it be the Treasury, and trying to figure out what's available to us from there. But at the end of the day, right, if we start to get into large fire fairly quickly into this summer, we're still going to have to hold that cash until into the fall. So we could run into some cash flow issues there still. So I think that just needs to be eyes wide open too going into the fire season. 3940 did a lot of really good things for us, but we do still have issues with available cash on hand right up front, and we're trying to work through that. And that still exists for us as we go into this summer. So just awareness that's still a thing for us to work.
Catherine, again, Michael, thank you for that clarification. It doesn't mean that we are out of the deep trench yet, but I see glimmers of hope, but it doesn't mean that if we have several large fires that we still aren't going to be cash short by the end of fire season. And I think that everybody needs to recognize that outside of the agency also. And that means in the legislative leadership and the executive. So thank you.
All right. All right, I'll move on to the next one. 2729 ARB planning. Casey highlighted a little bit but I'll go into detail a little bit more. The agency's currently in their planning cycle for the next biennial budget. We have been working under the guidance of the governors and DAS CFO's office on information sharing. We did finally hear back from the governor's office late Friday, on Monday about what policy option packages the agency can proceed and include into the ARB. We will be getting a communication out to all our stakeholders soon on those as we digest what approved policy option packages we have there. So it's been a good working relationship with the governor's office and our CFO's office on these as they've taken the month to look through our policy option packages that we put forward for the agency. So we'll be sharing more of that soon on that. So I don't want to get ahead of myself on what we have out there. So on that, so the full executive team gets to digest what is out there. So
I appreciate that update, and we'll say that this committee looks forward to being a part of that, hearing what those are. Thank you.
I will. Tracy Rolson is online to take the next bullet points, but any more questions for me?
Any other questions, comments from any members? Okay, thank you. Tracy, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning. Trace Wilson, Protection Finance Unit Manager for ODF. My report outs here will be on severity status and FEMA status of collections and strategic investments. I'll share my screen here with you. And please let me know if you need anything to be a little bit larger for those in the room. So normally I send out the severity budget status with all the aircraft and everything on it. There isn't anything to report there, so it's just a quick little snapshot of where we're currently standing with severity. Our first aircraft came on yesterday, so next EFCC meeting we'll have the full allotment of all the aircraft also available for view financially. The main thing I wanted to point out on the severity budget is sitting in a really good spot. We have a $1.8 million carryover for the biennial allocation from last fire season due to fly off and amount of incidents and all that we had with the aircraft. So a really good spot to be in with that. Plus we have the $12 million of this fiscal year's allocation coming in for this fire season. for a total of almost $14 million available to the severity program for use this year. So yeah, a really good spot. Plus, we also have an influx of money coming in from OSFM to assist with some of the aircraft costs of $500,000. So you'll see on the right-hand side here, kind of projected balance. We're still working through finalizing a few budget pieces on the severity side, particularly with personnel. And once we get that taken care of, the full numbers we put in here and this projected balance will actually be offset and closer to $0 at that point until we actually start receiving bills and flying off things on incidents. So really good spot with the severity program financially. Any questions on severity? All right, moving on to FEMA. So current status, and I guess, Brandon, let me ask, is that big enough for the people in the room?
Repeat the question, please.
Is that big enough for the people in the room? Just making sure.
Yes, we can see.
All right, thank you. So FEMA, really good work going on the FEMA side. And as James had mentioned, things starting to flow. The months that we had with the Department of Homeland Security being in shutdown mode, it limited our abilities because they also shut down their websites for us to be able to access and upload our FEMA documentation for reimbursement and claims. But that has opened up since, so progress is being made. Past years, 2020 to 23, really primarily just some administrative cleanup work yet to send in for reimbursement, small dollar amounts that covers part of the cost of our administrative work on handling audits and filing claims and all of that. So in a really good spot for all those past years. 2024, our plan was by the end of last year to have those submitted. But again, with the Department of Homeland Security and the websites being down, we couldn't. So we have roughly between FMEG, so the FEMA side grants, and the public assistance through OEM, coordinating that, roughly about $25 million, $26 million out there left for us to submit yet as a claim. And the reason we held off on that and then submitted when the websites opened is cost shares were being reconciled on a few of those fires and are being wrapped up in either us paying our federal counterparts or them paying us, as James has mentioned. And then once we get that information, we can wrap that all in one claim at one time for efficiencies. And we're anticipating within the next month and a half to get all of these 2024 fires submitted for pending review and final payment amounts. Again, once it's submitted, though, that's a 2-3 year process before everything is wrapped up on the federal side to get our reimbursements back. But sitting in a really good spot as far as ODF's work goes. And then 2025, those audits are beginning right now. And by October, November is the plan to have those fully submitted for 2025 for reimbursement through the federal system. So overall, Archie number, $92 million outstanding for us to receive on FEMA claims at this point. Questions on FEMA?
Tracy, have you seen any change in FEMA? I mean, noting what Mr. Short said about the Forest Service's change and being perhaps a little bit more prudent. Has FEMA indicated any culture shift?
At this point, no, I haven't seen any change. At this point, I'm pleasantly surprised and happy to not see change the opposite way, where it becomes more cumbersome. So at this point, we're seeing the status quo interactions with our FEMA counterparts within our region on auditing, on claims, submissions, and all of that. So very happy about that at this point. We'll see where the future leads as far as the reimbursement percentage amount and all of that that's running through, I can believe, the federal side of the world. So at this point, though, we're still at a 75% cost collect or reimbursement collection cost share on FEMA.
Thank you.
All right, and the last piece to talk about is strategic investments that come through OFLPF and the EFCC to ODF to fund investment opportunities on cameras and trailers and other things to help the firefighting effort. Current status of that dollar amount that we have available is 2020 investments. That's the year that we're still working on, which was a total of $1.5 million that was put in for investments. 1.3 million that has been spent. And we have a remainder of 176,000 left to spend on the ground to implement those strategic investments. The second page here is the detail of each one of those investments that were approved through the EFCC and the current financial status of those amounts spent, funds left, and again, 176,000 left in the ground. We do continue to stress with the field to get these wrapped up as soon as possible. We don't want these sitting on the books forever, but really good progress here to have 176,000 of the 1.5 million left. Good spot to be in at this point. Further here is for the packet that all of you received on this is the detail of each one of those and kind of the current status of where things are at the field level on those investments. Questions on strategic investments?
Tracy, this is Catherine. Don't know if this question is best for you, but curious, if we have a prior strategic investment that is not nailed down, as in it's not the Bly guard station that's not moving, it's a mobile resource like a trailer, do those actually, can they move all around the state and they are just pre-positioned in those locations and that they are co-owned resources, or do they belong to those districts?
I will default that to Mr. Kern or Mr. Short on those logistics when it comes to those strategic investments and movement of them.
Yeah, I think if I'm tracking your question, so like for the Bly Guard Station, that would be a Klamath Lake District asset that they would keep in that location. And for the most part, from all these projects that you see here, they are very district specific and will stay at that local district moving forward. Now, a future strategic investment request, depending on what it is, maybe it is a statewide asset or some sort of gadget, right, that will be able to move around the state. But in terms of the projects you're looking at, these are very district specific and will stay there.
Any other
Appreciate the time.
strategic
Thank you.
investment questions, committee? Right. Tracy, anything to continue on that topic?
End of report. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much. We good on the administrative branch report? Yeah, James has left the table, so I suppose we are. All right. Thank you, staff, for those thorough reports. Let's move to agenda item number 7 and look to Mr. Narms for a status update on the large fire cost collection efforts. Floor is yours.
All right, thanks for having me back. Kyle Nairns, the cost recovery specialist for the protection division. And just wanted to kind of give a brief overview, see if some of you are familiar with the previous reports, a little bit different than in the past, but wanted to provide a good summary for you of currently where the agency sits as a snapshot when it comes to fire cost collection. So a little blurb at the top there just to kind of give you a little context of where some of this comes from. It is just a snapshot, may not include everything that's currently going on, but pretty good estimate of where we're sitting at overall, both with large and small fire cost collections. Mentions our authorities there that were granted to us in law of how we collect costs, how we calculate it, the methods we use, and some of those liabilities spelled out. And then, with the sensitivity of some of these cases, the information is really not publicly available. So since it's a public meeting, we keep it pretty high level just to give you an overview and let you know where we're at, but try not to interfere with any of our active cases. So for stuff that's under active cost collection, I see a pretty big total there, that $30 million. That's anything that we've sent out a demand for to attempt collection, and it could be in the early stages or, you know, close to the end. But overall, the majority of those costs are sitting from the 2020 fire season, so at $29 million. So obviously, large fire year, a lot of big fires associated with the that wind event that came through, but hoping in the near future that a lot of those will be closed out, and we'll be done with 2020. You know, the other 2 years that are on there, 24 and 25, pretty small amounts currently. We have been with a lot of the increased capacity moving through years a little quicker. You know, you'll notice the 21 through 23, there's nothing on there. It's not necessarily that there's nothing to collect from those years, that they're complete, but what we have built out has been collected for those years so far. So there's still a few more to come through on those. Same with 24 and 25, but the speed of our collections has been increased with the increased capacity. So that's been nice to see. You know, one of the things that slows us down a little bit is just some of the financial processes we have to wait to complete before we can send a final bill. So cost shares is a big one for us. If a fire was under a cost share, you know, it takes 2 years to reconcile that data, and we're unable to bill until all that process is complete. So it's a few of the hangups on some of those years where it takes a little while to get those through. And then the long-term collection action, so that would be stuff where, you know, for smaller fires, if it's under a payment plan, you know, somebody who just couldn't pay all the costs up front. A lot of those are under restitution, which would be a court-ordered payment, you know, whether it be a criminal case at the state or federal level. And so you'll see a couple of those, you know, the total of 9 million, over 9.5 million there. 2 of those fires make up just over 8 million, and those are both restitution cases that the individuals are incarcerated, so we don't really see much money from that, but we will continue collection on those at least for a while, but eventually, you know, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. So, but you know, the remaining almost 1.5 million, it kind of covers a 10-year span of fires that are either, you know, early on or about to be completed in their payments or restitutions. And then just a general summary, just to give you an idea of kind of what we deal with year to year. You'll see kind of the 24, 25, the totals we collected in those years. That's not the fire season itself. That's, you know, during that calendar year, what we brought in. So, you know, anywhere from 2 to 2.5 million, which is, you know, a decent average over the years, you know, kind of goes in flux. But, and then this year currently, as of this report, end of April, we're over $5,500 or $562,000. So sitting pretty good already, with some good expectations of some more coming in throughout the year, especially in the fall and winter time. So that's the end of my report, unless you guys have questions.
Thank you. I appreciate this. This is a good high-level report, and it is good to see the diligence that continues to happen, building on some the growth in the program, and that we are collecting on these things, both in large collections through the 2020 Labor Day firestorm, as well as the small, and holding people accountable. I think that's important to recognize that fire, there is risk financially to individuals and businesses as well. The state. Any questions, comments, committee members? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Let's close agenda item 7 and move to number 8, the mitigation planning and implementation date.
Thank you. Give me just a second. There we go.
Yours.
Thank you very much for having me. My name is Jenna Nelson, and I'm the State Initiatives Grant Coordinator, and I work in the Forest Resources Division here at ODF. And I appreciate you guys having me here. I'm going to talk a little bit about mitigation planning and implementation. And this touches a lot mostly on the the LRP program, which is the Landscape Resiliency Program. But I'll talk a little bit about how that ties back to some of the funding that we got through the legislature this last time. So as you can see on the screen, there was actually 2 House bills that came through that helped support this program and the implementation of the Landscape Resiliency Program, which is part of the 20-year Landscape Resiliency Strategy. So House Bill 5006 was in 2025. That allocated $7 million in one-time funding for us to help support the program. That is not continuous funding, just a singular funding, so just a one-time $7 million amount. Then the House Bill 3940, which I know has been a conversation here more than once already. It essentially set up a situation where we get ongoing funding, and it came from 2 different funding streams. One is from the tax imposed on oral nicotine products. So a third of the monies are deposited into the Landscape Resiliency Fund, which is a separate fund and puts us into other funds. And the other one is the Oregon Rainy Day Fund, which transferred 6.7% of the amount calculated, which is also deposited into the Landscape Resiliency Fund. And just to give you guys kind of general numbers on that, the Rainy Day Fund tax piece is giving us about $500,000 a month. And that's been coming in from around September, October of last year. And the oral nicotine products piece has only given us a singular about 500,000 into the account so far since January. So the Landscape Resiliency Program has gone through a little bit of a shift in this year. We've changed our process a little bit. Previously, we were just doing a request for proposals out to kind of all of our partners and anybody who wanted to apply, which also included our ODF offices. But due to the fact that we're trying to create some alignment with our 20-year strategy and really emphasizing that local level implementation, there was some different shifts that happened in this new round. So essentially, there was a group that was put together called the LRP Implementation Group. This is an internal group to ODF, and it provides direction, scope, and leadership necessary to implement and integrate the 20-year Landscape Resiliency Strategy. The work group's charged with deliberating any key elements of the LRP program and developing related recommendations and identifying potential actions to operationalize those recommendations. And it also is taking on the responsibility of how do we start to integrate and align all of the different grant programs that we have available in the agency to help create a larger impact on the landscapes. And just to kind of make note, Levi Hopkins from our protection division is part of that LRP implementation group, just to kind of tie it back to protection here. So after that group was put together and they kind of identified how we were going to roll this out, they requested proposals from each of the different areas of ODF. There's 3 areas and each area could put in 3 different applications. So they went through a bit of a vetting process. So total, there could be up to 9 applications. And then there was an additional application that was made available specifically for rangeland because this program also supports rangeland. So once we got those applications in, they were all scored by third-party scorers, and I thought I would just kind of help give some context around who that is. So Association of Oregon Loggers, Natural Resource Conservation Service, Oregon Forest Industries Council, Ashland Fire and Rescue, Sustainable Northwest, Higher Education Coordinating Commission, the Nature Conservancy, United States Forest Service, Oregon State Fire Marshal, and Wallowa Resources. So you can see that our partners were very involved in identifying the landscapes and the applications that we're going to get funded with this money. So funding of the project solicited 3 final projects, which I'm going to touch on in the next few slides. And we're currently working to get this information out via like media and all of our websites and stuff. So that's in the process right now. So after the funding went out, the applications were identified this round, we did an after action review with all of the field folks and also with our third-party scorers to help kind of create an opportunity to give some feedback to that LRP implementation group that then is creating some recommendations in how do we improve the program going forward. So out of the total, we actually ended up allocating 9.6 million, which is the 7 million plus some additional funds out of that, the funding that had come through the rainy day tax and the Zen tax piece. So those are just obligated. Those aren't spent. The way that grants work generally, they get going on the work and we don't actually see the money flowing out the door for a little while, especially going into fire season. So I expect to see some of that money starting to kind of come in fall or spring of this next year, where they're going to start to be asking for reimbursement for the work that they're doing. So they're essentially going out through the ODF district offices at that local level. We do emphasize partnership, collaboration, work with the tribes, the youth corps. There's kind of a whole kind of group of different things that we're trying to make sure that we're hitting with these kind of applications and making sure that we're not losing our partnerships and we're not losing the excellent networking and capacity that we have out there. We're just doing it through the local space rather than from Salem out to everybody. So we're currently working on areas that we know have available, but we do want to keep things in mind, such as how do we start to create a process where we're really trying to identify where are the gaps, where do we need to do this work, how are we leveraging different work that's going on with our partnerships, as well as what we're doing internally. And the way that we're planning on doing that at this point in time is a combination of using what's called LRAFT, which is our Landscape Resiliency Accomplishment and Financial Tracker. And that has already been launched, but essentially what it is it's a mapping program that creates an opportunity for us to put all of our treatment layers in there so we can start to see how do our different programs line up, where are they at, how do we create more impact on the landscape. So it's been a process to get a lot of the historical data in there, but they are moving forward with it, and we're hoping to have a really great product coming here soon that we can see more of an interagency dashboard and maybe an internal dashboard to help summarize some of that work. And the other piece that we're working on is our landscape scale plans. So we have plans to do 9 landscape scale plans based on the applications got put in. And essentially what that's going to do is we're going to try and use data and science and information, different data sets from partners and from our own internal space, along with the INR, which is Oregon State University, who will also be providing support to create plans that essentially can do more detailed information so that we can build our projects in a way that's based off of monitoring, maintenance, and also scientific data. I just wanted to give you guys a kind of a outlook here around what we've done with this program so far. The program's been around since 2021. So it's kind of interesting how it rolled out because the 20-year strategy was also rolled out in 2021. So we were sort of building them next to each other, not necessarily integrated until fairly recently, where we're trying to kind of pull that 20-year strategy kind of overarching principles and goals and building our programs into that better. So that's kind of moving forward at this point in time. But as you can see, 2021 to 23, we had work in Southern Oregon, Central Oregon, Eastern Oregon, and even the Willamette Valley. And then 23, 25, we had Southeast, Southern, Northern. We were all kind of all over the different areas of the state. And then in 2026, that's this year, then we've got the 3 projects. You can see we've got Little River, which is DFPA is running that one. And then we've got the Hot Shots RX Connect. That's our Southern Oregon district office down there. And then the John Day one, which is out in John Day area, of course. So just visual. To give you guys an idea, you can see our 2021 projects, our 23 projects, and our 26 projects. And just for some context, whenever you're looking at a map, of course, these are project boundaries, not necessarily treatments. So we didn't necessarily treat the entire county in the John Day project. It'll be treatments within those areas. So I don't want to mislead you to make you think we've done treatments in that entire area yet. So where are we going into the future? So the 20-year strategy is kind of our overarching umbrella. This is kind of our North Star. How are we pulling everything together? And the Landscape Resiliency Program is a connector for the 12 other ODF programs identified in the 20-year strategy. And part of that's because it has this ability to be so flexible. We can use it on any landscape. any ownership. It has the flexibility of us being able to navigate it within our own agency is how long we want those projects to be and how often we want to put out the call for proposals. So we have a lot of autonomy with this program to fill in the gap and create some flexibility within some of the other programs, like what our federal partners and stuff offer us that have a little bit more specifics that they have to stick to. So this gives us that ability to be able to fill in the gaps where we haven't historically been able to with some of our other programs. So landscape scale plans are going to be another huge piece of this moving forward, being able to inform more efficient use of the funding and also help us identify appropriate maintenance and monitoring, which I think is a huge portion of the conversation that's always talked about, but is hard to implement. How do we make sure that the work that we're doing isn't just money going out the door, that we have to go back in 10 years and put the same amount of money on? So how do we do this in a low cost way? And we're trying to be thoughtful about that going forward. So a huge piece of this wouldn't be effective without our partners and our sister agencies and implementation at the local level. Those kind of conversations are so crucial for us to find any kind of success in this work. And then the other pieces are just the prescribed fire is a huge piece of this program. We do a lot of support for prescribed fire, and it's been kind of great with all of the recent changes in the agency and supporting the prescribed fire space. And this particular program is one that's really been emphasizing that kind of work. So that is what I have today. And if the committee has any questions for me.
So that's a great presentation. This is really important work. I have a question and then maybe a suggestion. How does this tie in with like Kyle's work on G&A? I didn't see the G&A projects I'm aware of mapped on that map you showed. Is this part of your program?
Yeah, good question. I can definitely answer this. So this is just Landscape Resiliency Program is its own program. G&A is its own program. We do have ties to G&A though. So G&A is one of the programs that's listed in the 20-year strategy. So there is work that on the background, we're looking to try and figure out how to align better with our other programs. And G&A is definitely high up there as far as how much treatment and work we're doing there. We've talked to Kyle quite a bit, and the landscape scale plans are actually going to be somewhat based on an extension of a contract he's already has with INR. So he's building mapping systems of kind of landscape scale type of planning of his own. And so we're creating landscape scale plans that are in alignment with those so that there is like an apples to apples there. So we can kind of build off of each other's and create consistency between the two programs. And Kyle and I talk quite a bit, but I think we still have opportunity to continue to align and create more options. But another piece of the applications for the Landscape Resiliency Program was how are they utilizing other programs in ODF, and that includes G&A. So that was some of the applications did include G&A work and how they were tying in with that in that program.
That LRAFT implementation seems to me like a good home to put both of those. And then I guess my suggestion would be, Kyle, this is prime material that the Board of Forestry, I think, should see. This is really important work. And I hadn't actually seen all that tied together like that. And that's kind of that comprehensive vision of how we're doing restoration mitigation work. I think we need to be talking more about that.
One additional question, a little bit more into the weeds here. The slide that listed the biennium funding, and you don't necessarily need to go back to it, but
Okay.
the acres listed there, what are those acres?
I'm going to go back to make sure I'm looking at the right one that you're talking about here.
Sure.
Are you talking about this one here?
Yeah.
So the acres here are footprint acres. They are not activity acres. So activity acres are a fun one. For those who are not as familiar, footprint acres are the amount of acres that are just basically the footprint on the ground. Activity acres is how many activities you did within that acreage. And we have to be very careful when we offer that information because the federal government likes to get the information more on activity acres, and our legislature really likes to look at footprint acres. So just making sure we're being clear, but a very good question, and these are our footprint acres.
Okay, and in some of these projects, there is cooperation amongst ODF and feds for on activity acres and bringing together additional funds to maximize and leverage additional activities.
Yes, correct. And one of the requirements for the application is how are they benefiting and working with our federal partners, whether it be on federal land or working with them in some sort of partnership. So that was weighed in the scoring. And also in the past, we've actually given our federal partners funding out of this program to do work. So because it can be on any land ownership, they could actually apply. But they did it within another like a partnership with ODF. So it usually is where can we start to use things like the widened amendment? Where can we start to utilize opportunities where we can cross burn?
Yeah, and
Those
that
are big ones.
ties back to Heath's comment in terms of G&A.
Yeah,
how,
definitely.
this puzzle starts to fit together.
Right.
So, thank
We're
you.
trying to make that happen.
Is one of the scoring requirements that there are federal partners? Because I see most of these projects near federal owned lands, but I come from a part of the state that doesn't have a lot of federally owned lands. So if that is definitely one of the scoring things, then I would wonder, how are we going to have an even distribution of projects across the state?
That's a great question. So it is not a requirement. I maybe misspoke when I said requirement, but it is a scoring piece. So it does have leverage of you get a certain number of score for having a federal piece to it. But if you have a really amazing application, it wasn't enough points that it would significantly hinder you from getting the funding. Because there was other opportunities in there like tribal engagement, youth core work, collaboration, a lot of different stuff in there. I can't remember every single piece right now, but so it was just one of many that people could emphasize. But obviously, if you have all of those things, you would score higher.
I think real quick, I would add to, right, I think long-term moving forward, right, there is a pretty big corner of the state that's not covered in the priorities that you still get fires to occur. There's still that risk. And, as an agency, we will need to try to figure out how they're not lost or, in the process. Because there's been a lot of good work in that part of the state to date with a lot of the grants that we've gotten. So it is something as an agency we'll need to work on just to make sure that they're not necessarily forgotten about in this process either. And they're still kept in the fold there for competing for those types of grants. So we'll be trying to address that long term. Just not sure how the how or the when yet.
Thank you for that, Catherine, again. I noticed that some of these are in near urban interfaces with the forest. And very important for those people, but it also doesn't cover the areas at the present time. These projects in this plan don't cover the areas with the greatest population centers in the state either. So I'm trying to figure out how, but some of those areas don't also have maybe historically the larger fires, except maybe in 2020. So I'm trying to figure out how going forward we have an even approach.
Can I respond to that? Okay. I want to just remind you that we have 12 other programs, and I think that some of them do fit better in that space. We also have urban and community forestry that has done amazing work and is also a great opportunity. And I will also highlight that there is really good conversation right now by our leadership around the idea of doing pilot projects that involve a combination of Oregon State Fire Marshal and LRP, which is the Landscape Resiliency Program, and how we can best leverage then supporting urban areas and the surrounding areas around them between the two programs. And so 100%, I think you're right. I mean, we need to be looking at that and continuing to emphasize the needs there. And I think we can do that between all of the different program opportunities, our partnership programs as well, and just having better understanding of when can we leverage what, where is what we're working towards, so that that decision is much clearer on how we can then implement and work towards more opportunities in some of those areas.
Catherine again, and I would agree with that. But I look at this program and I see a solid funding source coming from the general fund for this program, whereas not all 12 programs in the department have the same designated revenue fund stream as this one. So I see this one as a key performance indicator.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the conversation and for the update. This was very helpful. There is clearly a strong nexus between these type of projects and the effectiveness of preparedness and suppression. I think that's one part of the new space that this committee is entering into. And so this update is has a strong nexus and very appreciated. Thank you, Ms. Elson. With that, let's move on to agenda item number 9, the status updates on the EFCC work groups. I'm going to put some committee members here on the spot who are on some of these work groups. I'll jump in real quick on the disbursements work group. That is a work group with both myself and member Eric Crangis. We've had several meetings. We had we're in a very good spot, ready to present some information, but we are waiting on resolution of one very important, and that is tied with the harvest tax allocation. We did have we have some information that we can start to dive into a bit to make a proposal for this committee to consider on how best to allocate that portion of the dollars for preparedness. And at this time for these, let's just provide updates and so that we can, recognizing the time that we have left in the committee meeting in large, we'll move forward. Anything from the unencumbered fund balance work group?
Nothing new since the last committee meeting.
Excellent. Thank you. Reviewing district budgets. John.
Yeah, nothing new since the last committee meeting. Kranzich and I still need to get together and discuss that some more.
Thank you. Reviewing large fire costs. Catherine, Bobby, one of you.
Catherine here. We held our first meeting and we received a presentation, asked for additional metrics to start our analysis, and we have another meeting scheduled on the 16th.
Very good, thank you. And then I can give a quick update on the final one, the OFLPF administration work group, which includes myself and Catherine. And we have our first meeting scheduled for that, which that was by design to put that work group at the end, kind of as a catch-all for other things that may have fallen through the crack with these other work groups. And also to kind of perhaps look at it at a larger picture and make sure that we're in a good spot. So the fact that we have that meeting we're scheduled is good news in terms of progress of these work groups, and that we're moving forward with a hopeful, we need to really start wrestling with these in the public space upcoming in early fall. So, all right, with that, we'll close that agenda item and move to agenda item number 10, Protection Division report. Mr. Curran, you and your staff, floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So for the record, Michael Curran, I'm the Chief of Fire Protection for ODF. Maybe before I get started on my topics, just a quick thing on item number 9. Just want to thank the committee. I know behind the scenes, there's a lot of really good work going on with the various work groups, and these are all ultimately in place to help us as an agency and assist us in coming up just with good operating business practices and helping us long term. So just appreciate all that work going on behind the scenes from you all. I know it takes a lot, so thank you for that.
And I want to jump in. I'm remiss in not thanking the staff for the time and energy they've been putting into that. That's recognized as an additional unplanned workload. And it's not easy because you have a good committee here who asks lots of hard questions and is very thorough. And I sincerely appreciate staff time and the leadership from you as well as just the engagement. So thank you.
Yep. I appreciate those hard questions, Brennan. So yeah, I got a few different topics here to talk through. First one being an update on 2026 spring fires. Y'all got to see the very rosy fire season outlook presentation. You know, I like to just kind of level set with those two, right? Those are planning tools that we use. It does not paint a very good picture for us. There is a ton of potential and risk out on the landscape this summer, given just with how dry we've been with limited snowpack and below average moisture. But at the end of the day, those are planning tools. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the end all be all worst fire season we've had. It's all variant on what type of weather systems come in during the summer. We are planning as if it's going to be a very bad fire season. That's what we're prepped for, we're ready for. But at the end of the day, too, right, that doesn't necessarily tell the story from the beginning that it's going to be the worst fire season on record. As mentioned, we are planning for it. But just to remind folks, too, those are planning tools. We'll see what happens throughout the summer, but we are definitely planned and ready the best we can. So with that, given how dry we've been this winter, I'd actually say we've been very successful from a fire response standpoint. Our districts have done a very good job being ready this spring and responding to fires as they've popped up. Pulled some stats this morning. So to date, for 2026, ODF's had 132 fires for 432 acres burned. And that's on ODF's jurisdiction, and on statewide totals for all jurisdictions, we've had 308 fires for 5,500 acres burned. You know, there's been some really good catches by the district. Just thinking through the Loveless fire down in Klamath Lake District, that was a pretty challenging fire this spring. That, thanks to their good partnership with our Forest Service partners down there, we're able to get around that fire pretty quick. And just as of yesterday, our Southwest Oregon district, and working in conjunction with CAL FIRE, they had a really good catch down on the Oregon-California border. And then in our most favorite part this time of year, that Geneva country near Lake Billy Chinook, had a new start over there yesterday afternoon, and our folks were able to get on that pretty quick. So districts are working very hard and doing really good work out there, trying to attack these fires as quickly as we can, given just with how dry we are this time of year. So shout out to all of them and their good work that they're doing. We have had a couple large fires in the state so far, mainly burning on federal jurisdiction and RFPA jurisdiction between the Zen fire and Pine Mountain fire. So we have seen a couple large fires so far, but thankfully they've been short-lived. But given how dry we are, we are fully expecting activity to pick up. So we are ramping up the best we can and are ready to go with that. So just an update on our severity resource plan. I did provide just a couple handouts, not going to cover those in detail, more just awareness for you. One of them is a map of just where all of our severity assets are highlighted. And then another map is just what the 30-minute response area is for all of our severity aircraft. Fully understanding, we do have a gap in Northwest Oregon, and just know that we have plans in place as activity dictates it. We will transition severity resource aircraft or even some of our crews up into Northwest Oregon if it's needed to either respond to a particular weather event, or later in the season as our other areas start to wind down, we'll shift remaining assets over to Northwest just to be able to provide a quicker response to those areas. So those practices have been in place for a long time, and we're fully planning on deploying those moving into this summer as well. But in all, in terms of our severity resources, looking pretty good for the most part. We did make a decision a few years back that we're going to start to reduce all of our fixed wing detection platforms just to be able to help our severity budget keep pace with keeping our helicopters on contract and our air tankers and having some crews on board. So we are down one detection platform. We talked last year about an air attack program we're starting to build just due to some increasing costs in our Type 2 helicopter contracts. We are having to drop one of those air attack platforms, but we're fully committed to at least keeping one in the system at a minimum. That'll be stationed out of Roseburg this year, but will be available statewide, and we'll move that around the state as we need to pre-position it if it's needed. And And the main reason it is stationed out of Roseburg, that's just where we have our largest concentration of air attacks in the state. So it's easier. So we're not having to ask those folks to be in hotels all summer long. They can go home at night for the most part, and staff that aircraft the best that we can. So we do have two of our single engine fire scoopers on already. They started June 1st in the Dalles, and then we'll slowly start to bring resources on the rest of the summer, or closer to the summer as we get, as conditions dictate. So really good to go there and feeling good with where we're at. And our MMA, we finally got it. Arrived in Salem on Sunday at noon. That's in the finishing stages of just getting all the finishing touches put in place that we need to, and some of our aerial observer training done. And we're hoping that will be fully up and operational as of the 4th of July weekend and ready to roll statewide. And once it does, that will be pre-positioned in Prineville, just like our part Navi always has been in past years. So from a severity resource plan update, again, feeling really good with where we're at. And I've talked to this group before about it, but just the cost of, in particular, aviation, but also just fire costs in general for resources. Costs are going up dramatically, well above what standard inflation is. So if we do not see continued investments in our severity budget, very well could be having to make hard decisions in the next couple of years. I'm not raising the red flag yet, but just trying to highlight to folks that that's definitely a watch out for my seat that we'll have to keep an eye on over the next couple of years to see what severity resources we'll be able to keep, just given with how much costs are going up for us in the budget that we've got. So before I get into the BLM agreement, any questions on fire season to date or severity plan?
Catherine, thank you. And thank you for your comments about Northwest Oregon. We've had conversations about this before, and we know we aren't in the short circle of response, but when you do send resources, if we do have a fire, we just want to make sure they have fuel when they get there.
Yep.
So that's where we're sitting up there. Thank you.
Yep, and one thing I probably should have mentioned, a game changer for us last year was getting that Type 1 helicopter located out of Crestwell. No, it's not far northwest Oregon is not on that 30-minute response, but an additional 10, 15 minutes, we can just about get there. So having that Type 1 in Crestwell is a game changer and does provide quite a bit of relief to northwest Oregon, along with those scoopers out of the Dells.
Michael, I will say, as the conversations around severity, resource planning, and the costs continue to mature and need to frankly happen with our legislature, this committee can commit to being a part of that, because severity is a very cost-effective and effective way for preparedness. The ability to move things around the state, right? We can be there to support you in those conversations.
Okay, no, appreciate that.
Yeah, I was just going to add, Michael, that, on the east side of the state, we live and die by the severity resources that we have. Those seats fly all the time. And, with the concern over the next couple of years about the funding of it, I think would make a lot of landowners on the east side of the state really concerned.
Yep.
Just my 2 cents.
Yep. Nope, understood. Definitely tracking that from conversations we've had with the landowner associations over there, and we've discussed this. So definitely tracking that. And one thing I did forget to mention with our severity resource plan, really cool partnership this year with the new United States Wildland Fire Service. They're actually going to house 2 of their seats in conjunction with our 2 seats in Prineville. So we'll essentially have 4 seats now able to fly on missions when needed, other than the standard 2 that we've had. So neat opportunity there, and just shout out to our aviation staff for being able to get that set up this year. So moving into the BLM agreement, I think very positive conversations this off season. We're in the process of trying to get a modification made. And ultimately what that will do is just help align our Western Oregon operating plan, large fire expenditures, to mirror what our new large fire policy and eligibility requirements are. So we're not having to do 2 different financial processes and tracking. So that'll all be aligned and in the same. So feeling really good with where that's at. And then one thing we have learned is that the Western Oregon operating plan will no longer be under the BLM. It will be transitioning over to the new U.S. Wildland Fire Service. So we've been in talk with their geographic area fire chief. The main folks we've been working with the BLM, as they transition into the new Wildland Fire Service, they'll still have that background. So I'm feeling really good with where we're at with that, and hopefully we'll have the amendment signed here soon, along with the 1-year extension. So the BLM, the original agreement that we have signed is set to expire June 30th of 2026. That agreement gave us the ability to extend it annually for a total of up to 5 years. So this will be that first extension, which will get it through June 30th of 2027. And we'll continue conversations with the Wildland Fire Service of what comes next after this season. And we'll definitely keep folks up to speed on status of those conversations as they occur starting this fall. And then the last one, forest land classification status report. So if folks recall, maybe this is new for some of the new members, but the agency was directed, not this last long session, but the long session before, to essentially put a pause on our forest land classification efforts. And at a high level, what that really does is it's us determining who receives wildland fire protection from ODF or who doesn't. In large part, we were asked to pause it due to, I believe it was House Bill 4133. I might have that one wrong. But anyways, we wanted to work through all the details of that legislation and impacts that could potentially have either to ODF or the rural fire departments. And then that pause essentially just stayed in place as the Fire 35 got into place. And as we started working through the legislation with House Bill 3940. Now that 3940 has passed, that pause has been lifted. So we're starting down the pathway of getting our districts to kickstart the forest land classification efforts. This is a big priority for me to get done as an agency and get us on a pathway to getting all the counties up to speed. As you all know, what that ultimately means is ensuring that as an agency, we're up to speed in terms of who should be paying and who shouldn't. And ultimately with that, who's paying the minimums and who's paying surcharges, right? So we can make sure that Oregon Forest Land Protection Fund is staying healthy the best that we can moving forward. And at the end of the day, it's really trying to make sure that who should be paying is. So with that, we're trying to do this in a phased approach. There's a lot of work that goes on at various levels, including up to the Board of Forestry, if there's appeals on the very back end of all this. So we're trying to plan this out in a way that we do it in stages and we don't have all the counties going forward at once. It's a 2 to 3 year process if we're having to start from scratch. A lot of counties have already been done, which is good. So they just need to get into their 5-year review process, which is not as big of a workload. That's fairly manageable at the local level. So we are working with 5 counties currently to get the process going. A couple of them have already started, but between Washington, Grant, Curry, Umatilla, and Marion County, those are the 5 counties we'll be moving forward with. And then we'll have some more counties start up in 2027 as well, moving forward. So looking forward to getting that process going again. And at the same time, we're updating our forest land classification, just overall processes and manual, and trying to get that as current as possible to the best of our ability, and trying to partner with the counties on that as well, because they're a big step in this for us and they do a lot of work for us, and that needs to be recognized. But yeah, hopefully we can get in a good 3 to 5 year process here and actually be sitting in a really good spot to get all the counties done. So that'll be the goal anyways.
I'm encouraged to hear the partnership with the counties because that's a vital
Yep.
part of the success and implementation of this.
Yep.
Getting them on board and understand
Yeah.
what this means for them and for the state at large. So thank you.
Michael, Catherine, Washington County, you mentioned that you're starting work on that. We've been thinking about that. We've strategized. I've talked to people. The districts talk to people. As we start up, it would be helpful to make sure that we have the full support of Salem. If we need people to show up in front of our county commissioners or things like that, that it's going to be interesting. We're just wrapping up Yam Hill right now. But after Washington, then we're going to go to Columbia. But there's been a lot of development in Washington County. And so, and it's a large population county. So I would just ask that as we go forward to make sure that if we hoist the flag, that you guys would help.
Yep, yep, and that's so 100%. Definitely Salem staff there to help the districts. And really just, I think 2 weeks ago, one of my policy staff attended a meeting with the county with one of the districts. So we've relayed that to make ourselves available the best that we can. So there is that true partnership there. Okay, unless there's questions. That's what I got.
See one item on here for a strategic investment proposal. Are we moving?
Yep, and I believe Justin Lauer's on to talk through that. He was anyways.
Yeah, Michael, I'm here. So going back to the strategic investment, originally in 2020, Northeast Oregon was awarded $150,000 for 2 camera sites in Northeast Oregon. Those were Eden and Weston Mountain. They are both currently online. However, those sites came in substantially lower than the amounts that were awarded to the district. We have in the past taken those funds and used those for other camera sites within the district. So far, those funds have funded Eden, Weston Mountain, Bridge Creek, and Mount Harris within the district. So 4 camera sites, and we are looking to utilize the remaining funds, roughly $35,000, to fund a 5th site within Northeast Oregon, and that will be Glass Hill in Union County.
Okay. Any questions? I think a bit of background here for committee members is we can shift this to a possible decision item to allow for those strategic investment dollars to be utilized as Justin just requested. We can also choose to not, or we can defer to a different time. Historically, with strategic investments, if requests typically come in a grant form to put a camera, and if that site is not available for some reason after the request is approved, but it's moved to a different site that's considered kind of within the same scope, it's just taken care of. This is an additionality, right? Hence why it's coming back to this committee to say, do we utilize, how do we repurpose those dollars, those available dollars? So first off, Justin and to Northeast, good job on not spending all the money and finding and then coming back for ways to leverage that to continue to increase the detection capacity. Really, that question is, do we release these dollars back to Northeast Oregon to allow them to put this in as they've made a request, or do we pull these dollars back and make a further analysis on, are we going to look for strategic investment? Are we going to bring the dollars back into the strategic investment fund and then solicit other requests, or hold on to the money until we bring in a larger cap of money available? So any questions for Justin before we further discuss this?
I'm a non-voting member, but are there competing demands for these dollars that should be considered? I feel like this is kind of being asked in a vacuum.
That's an excellent question. Currently, we have not solicited for strategic investment ideas. So I can't say that there are or there are not. $30,000, 35, I believe is what you said, Justin.
Yes,
Um,
that's correct.
Historically, we have funded some things at 35,000. I would say just based on my limited experience with strategic investments, there's have not been a lot of grant requests at that small amount. Right. So we are in a vacuum a bit.
And, you know, I think it'd be entirely, just personally, entirely appropriate to defer to staff on that. But I don't think staff has made a representation about this investment versus other investment opportunities in the state.
Any other comments or questions?
I obviously have a little biased opinion since it's my home district, but I mean, I think at the end of the day, we awarded that lump sum. They came in underneath that dollar figure. There's excess. They're going to use it for a good cause and put another camera up. So I'm in favor of, doing it. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, John Davis, and I think I'd echo that. I mean, if they were able to get all the cameras they planned up and have enough money to do additional cameras, then, good on them. And maybe other folks should look at how they did that.
I'll add my opinion here that I echo what you have both said, that you were prudent use of your money and you found another way to use the surplus. That said, I do look at this as it's strategic investments in my eyes really look at the big picture statewide and where we can be very effective. And the lack of that big picture view for these dollars, even within the district, to see how this camera fits in the big picture for the district or for the area is difficult for me to move forward with supporting it. I remain open to being convinced, but I would want to see a little bit more information about how this fits in to the district rather than just a simple request of, can I repurpose this for an additional camera?
Yeah, I guess along those lines, one of the questions I had initially was just kind of timing on this. When's the drop? Kind of when's the cutoff when a decision has to be made? And then are there other places that have been looking for need detection cameras and have some big holes in their ability, in their coverage, that should be also considered within the state?
Yeah. One other additional bit of context here is, one of the strengths of 3940 was to maintain a balance which could draw interest, and that interest is accruing. And one of the things that the work group disbursements committee will bring to this committee is utilizing that interest to fund SI moving forward, right? And so it could be, in theory, next year or later in 2026 that we solicit for grants statewide for SI and $35,000. Then, so that's kind of a timing issue relative to this ask right here in front of us. As I'm exposing that because, in my own opinion, if I thought it was 5 years before we could roll out an additional SI request, I'd probably be more inclined to say, like, yeah, let's put it to use right now. But if we are, and this is very much in theory and largely speculation, as we look at the interest grow in the account, we want to put it to good use in addition to the administrative costs. It could be sooner rather than later that we're ready to do a statewide solicitation for SI. And so this money could move to SI to be redeployed in another year, 18 months, 2 years, whenever the committee decides to make that deployment.
I think one thing, Brennan, just from my perspective, one thing I can mention is our districts and staff here in Salem at the same time, especially Jamie Paul, have worked very hard since 762 and us getting those investments to add additional detection cameras. So, they're constantly going through planning efforts, both internally and with our partners externally to really determine where those gaps that we have. I mean, I think we can point to lots of success stories. I can't remember if it was, no, it may have been 2 summers ago. Within an hours of one of our cameras getting put up in Eastern Oregon, it had already spotted a fire for us and we were able to get on it, right? So there is a lot of good work going on behind the scenes from a planning effort to make sure we are installing those at the right locations, right? And obviously it's your guys' call what to do with the money, but in terms of the work, I know Justin and his folks have been working hard behind the scenes to make sure we're putting these cameras in the right locations and working with our partners as well. So there's a coordinated effort. So just know that that is going on behind the scenes continually as we've got available funds to be able to continue to add cameras to the overall system.
A follow-up question is, John, I believe you asked the question, like, what is the timing, right? If we made a decision today, how quickly could that camera go up?
Or I guess my question was more, is it time sensitive that we have to make a decision today? I mean, this is something that has to be done this summer, or I mean, is it going to be up and operational this summer? Or something that if it doesn't really matter, it would be operational for next summer?
It looks like Jamie Paul's got her hand up, and I'm sure Justin can help answer that too.
I'm going to defer to Justin to answer that question first.
Yeah, so right now we do have the site agreements in place for Glass Hill with a plan to have that camera operational this summer if approved with the funding.
I look to the committee go ahead.
I'm so sorry. Jamie Paul, Senior Planning Analyst for the Protection Division, ODF. Just a real quick kind of where we are on Glass Hill. Glass Hill is essentially a bonus camera that has been cobbled together through several funding sources. It's got probably some parts from Senate Bill 762, old money, and then it's also utilized a federal grant from that put up 4 cameras down in Southern Oregon, mostly in CFPA, and there were funds left over from that. And then we had this opportunity to, because of the funds left over, we had the opportunity to kind of cobble an extra camera up at a really tactically strategic site in Northeast Oregon at Glass Hill. Because it's a cobbled together bonus camera site, the $30,000 really will finish it off. And if there was any recommendation I would make to get Glass Hill up, especially seeing that it would be up this summer in a very tactically important site location, my recommendation would be to release the $30,000. $30,000 would not fund a new camera site from startup, but it will certainly finish an existing camera site that's been in the works for months.
I appreciate that. Is there a recommendation or motion by the committee?
Chair, do we need to get more information, or do you feel with Jamie's response and Michael's response that it's answered some of the questions that were outstanding?
I appreciate that question. My perspective, I'm going to hold my comment until I have what I need to make an informed decision. And recognize any, if we request additional information, and seeing as it is June 2nd, there is, we would likely have to hold a special meeting to make this decision. Again, I have what I need to make a decision, but I'll look to the committee for a motion, or we can defer, not make a motion. I would appreciate not leaving this in limbo, and I think we owe it to staff to make a motion and decision today.
So this is John. I would move to release those funds to allow them to install that camera. I think rewarding them for being prudent and being able to call together an extra camera is good, rather than sending a message that they need to spend all the money or lose it.
Okay, we have a motion to release the money for the glass hill camera.
I'll second it.
We have a second. All those in favor reply with aye.
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 Aye. The motion carries, and we'll move forward. I will add a comment to my motion, is that in the future for situations like this, this was what I wanted to provide. What I was not going to provide before is, from my perspective, we need additional information. I need to see the big picture. I need to see how it works in the district, right? I need to make I need more information to make an informed decision and feel confident in that decision. These are landowner dollars, and I want to make sure this committee is understanding the picture as it is a statewide decision. Right? I do applaud the district for saving money and then coming up with new ways to use that increases detection. However, it felt like I felt a little boxed in on this vote, given time and the situation. And cannot guarantee my votes in the future if put into this same situation and as I was today would go the same way. But even if I voted against it, I would have lost. So congratulations. And thank you. All right. Anything else, Mr. Curran, while we're still on discussion item number 10?
Nope. I think the only thing I'd add on the SI piece, I hear you. I think moving forward with future strategic investment proposals, especially since these ones have been on the books for so long, right? And they've gone through multiple people. We can build into some of the processes internally that we can put a little more checks and balances in place to where as new things pop up, we can just make sure there's that touch point with the FCC moving forward and doing all that. So given where we're going with rulemaking and new policy for EFCC, I think we can do the same thing internally and just make sure we're aligned on, as we look to change dollars up or a project up, we can make sure there's a touch point before work actually starts. So.
Yeah, and I think to that point, as the committee wrestles with how to, and this will be some internal policy making with strategic investments down the road, we can also firm up expectations. Yeah. And line those out so we're all working from that way we're effective and thank you, we're transparent. We're also making sure that these are landowner dollars. There are pennies in here from other parts in the state, and we need to make sure even those pennies are well accounted for and decisions are being made for resources and assets that are in other parts of the state. So
Yep. And a big one for me too is really honing in on stricter timelines for getting projects done by, and we're not letting them sit on the books for so long.
Amen to that. Thank you. Okay, with that, we'll close agenda item number 10. We are nearing the end of our 2-hour meeting. I'm going to provide the warning to the public that our next agenda item is the administrative report, but immediately following that is a public comment period. So if you have or wish to make a public comment, Please raise your hand during the administrator report or type your public comment into the comment section. Same for those in the room. If you wish to make a public comment, please be prepared to do so. When I move to that agenda item, I'm going to just briefly hold to offer anybody who has a last second, but we won't be sitting waiting in silence for very long. All right, close agenda item number 10, move to number 11, the administrator report. Ms. Hirsch, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you, Nancy Hirsch, Emergency Fire Cost Committee Administrator. I've got 3 brief topics to cover. The first one is your fiscal year 25 audit report. Posing this as a decision item with a correction. The FY 25 audit report was presented and approved at your March EFCC meeting, and I reported numbers from the narrative on page 1. And that page 1 is right there in front of you, though not seeing the redacted numbers on that. So I'll read straight through it. So bottom line is on page 1 of that audit report, in a paragraph there that starts with during fiscal year 25 on the screen, it's at the very bottom on the left. And for some reason, it's not showing the track change, but I read the number as $309,664,207. The actual number that was reflected in the table below was the number was $310,933,504. The same thing happened on the net costs or the estimated claim was reported at 129 plus million when the table below it, the actual number was $134,759,308. Now the screen in front of you is showing the track change. So my recommendation is simply, I'll own, I made the mistake. Lorna was correct in updating the table. I missed updating the narrative. And so I would like to recommend that the EFCC accept these changes as presented on the screen now in front of you on page 1 of that audit report, and also reflect at the top that this is a corrected report as of June 2nd.
So can I have a motion to approve the corrected audit report?
Mr. Chair, I move the Emergency Fire Cost Committee accept the Oregon Forest Land Protection Fund fiscal year 25 audit report as corrected at the June 2nd, 2026 meeting.
Second.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Catherine. All those in favor respond with aye.
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 Aye. Aye. Okay. Motion passes unanimously.
All right. Thanks for making that easier easier for me. So my other 2 items, I have continued to touch on that we are continuing to strive to balance the books of the Oregon Forest Land Protection Fund on fiscal years that are essentially back to when the Wildfire Protection Act was passed in 2013. 13, 14, 15, 16 have all been balanced. We are currently working, Lorna is with one of the staff out of business services on fiscal year 17 and have another meeting coming up this week. So looking positive there with the engagements happening. Just wanted to give you a quick update on that. And then lastly, I have communicated earlier with Chair Gereltz and Michael Curran, both of whom I report to, earlier this year that I felt like with House Bill 3940 passing and the work that the committee's doing, I thought it might be a good time for me to transition at some point into full retirement. So I am planning for that effective November 1, and just at least wanted to give you all a heads up that there is that work underway. And obviously, Michael and Brennan probably need to be able to talk a little more openly about that at some point and leave it at that. But more to follow, and I'll still see you in September. Thanks.
Thank you, Nancy. And the retirement, extremely well earned. So yes, we will continue, Michael and I will continue to work on that. We're talking and slowly working on it. But in conversations with Nancy, and I believe this committee and the state owes it to her to not slow roll those and to be ready to go. So we don't try and beg her to stay. I will happily beg, to be very clear. I would very happily beg, but Nancy's done incredible work for the state and deserves every moment of retirement that she wants.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I would suggest that you plan for some overlap time so she can train a replacement.
That's in the works.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Just don't drop them.
I mean, a couple hours should do.
Lifetime for 2 hours.
Sure. All right. Thank you, Nancy. We'll close agenda item 11, the administrator report, and move to agenda item 12. Could we drop that screen, please? I don't see any bubbles next to raise hands. And there's nothing in the comments. Nope. Excellent. All right. So if members occur, we will adjourn today's meeting and prepare for Tuesday, September 8th, next meeting. Get some nods of approval. All right, thank you. With that, we'll close June 2nd, 2026 EFCC meeting at 12:12. Thank you all.